4th grade, it's Miss MacDonald here. So for this week's project, we're doing something a little different. We're actually going to create an assemblage of a tree using foil and paper. Now, our focus this week is on texture. There's 2 different types of texture. Texture is the way something feels, the surface of something, whether it's rough or smooth. Artists use implied texture, which is where it looks like that there's going to be texture, but when you feel it, it's smooth because it's just implied. It's not real or actual. Actual texture or real texture is when you feel it, like this foil feels rough and bumpy. So that is real texture. So we're going to use both these forms of texture for our project. So I'm excited to see how it turns out. The supplies you're going to need for this project is going to be some leaves you find from outside. I would kind of try to pick a variety and then practice with the rubbings to see which ones you like best. Scissors. You will need crayons and foil for this project. And if you don't have watercolor, I know some of you told me that you did, you can use watercolor for this, but if you don't have any watercolor, you can use coffee as a substitute, and that's what I'm going to be using today. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start with creating several different rubbings of leaves. From experimenting, I thought this leaf was going to, or this type of tree was going to look pretty cool, but it's hard to tell what it is. So I'm going to stick with just this type of leaf. I'm going to use the same one over and over again. So it is good to get a variety of different leaves if you want to, but rub them first to see which works best. So for this project, we're focusing on texture. We're going to have a real texture. We're going to make the tree trunk out of foil, and then we're going to have the implied texture, which is the leaves, and we're going to create rubbings of leaves. So crayons do work best. Again, if you don't have access to crayons, you can try colored pencils or even like a graphite pencil. That's fine too. So you'll notice that I actually peeled my crayons halfway. For me, that makes it easier to do the rubbings. You can color like this if you want, but for me, it's a lot easier and faster to do it this way. So I'm going to start with, I just tore this piece of paper out of my sketchbook. So I'm going to start like this, and I'm going to rub the leaf. It's okay to go over it, because we are actually going to be cutting these out. Okay, so there's my first rubbing. You can clearly see the leaf. Now you can use realistic colors like green, or like I'm actually going to use like all different types of colors, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue. So I want kind of like a rainbow tree going on with lots of color. And I think I'm going to make 2 rubbings for each color crayon. So I'm going to do that right now. Again, if you just want to do one color, that's fine, or just do a couple, that's also fine too. But I would say you need at least like 6 to 8 leaves. I think I'm going to end up with 12 of them. So I'm going to continue rubbing. Okay, now that I have all my rubbings, I'm now going to cut them out. And I'm going to cut right at the edge of the leaf. Okay, so once you're done with all your different rubbings, this is where we're going to do a wax resist. Now, wax resist is when you take something like a crayon that is made out of wax and you put water over it. The wax like resists the water from going in. So what happens is the crayon stays, but all the white spaces that you have left over get filled with that watercolor. Now, if you have watercolor, it is going to work much better than the coffee. But if all you have is coffee, then that is totally fine. And we're gonna use, that's what I'm gonna use right now. Now, if you don't have anything that you can paint with, that's okay. Like you can stop at this stage and go on to the next step. But if you have watercolor or coffee, like I really suggest trying this. So all I do is I take my coffee and I paint over it. Now, it's not going to be very like a huge change, but you can see the color of the coffee is showing through a little. Again, this works much better with watercolor, but we're using what we have available to us. So I'm going to go and I'm going to paint all of these leaves with the coffee now. Now that I'm done painting with the coffee, I'm actually going to clear my area for the next step, because we're not going to glue this down, we're just going to assemble our tree. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, so our next step, we're going to use foil. So I just cut like a decent sized square foil out, and this is actually going to be the, I'm trying to create the texture of the bark of the tree out of the foil. So for the first one, I'm going to cut a pretty decent chunk out of it. And then I'm going to lightly crumple it. And this is going to be the trunk of the tree. Then I'm going to cut smaller pieces for the branches. Now, I'm not connecting them, I'm just laying them down to create this image or this picture. So we're just going to assemble it. So the next step will be to create all the tree limbs and the different branches, and then I'm going to add in the leaves behind it to create my tree. Okay, so I finished arranging my tree. You can see that I used actual texture to create the bark with foil, and that I used implied texture for the tree leaves. And you don't have to glue it down or tape it together. You're just laying it out on a surface and taking a picture and sending it to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing those pictures. Bye.